maybe start backwards because isn't that always the case? Where the card we're looking for is in the back. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I just wanted to pop on quickly and go through my Marseille study that I'm doing with Tarocchi by Mr. Friborg. So as many of you know, it was my goal this year to do 2 deep dive studies with 2 different decks, and I just completed my 5-month deep dive with the Majestic Earth Tarot. And now, after I've had a little bit of a break to gather my thoughts and organize this study, I'm going to be hopping into it. So I'll be doing things a little bit differently for this study versus the Majestic Earth study that I completed. So let's talk about it. So I've jotted down here my study outline that I'm going to be following, and I'm just going to kind of go through it quickly with you. I will be doing a 3-month study instead of a 5-month study. I just felt like for Marseille and the style it is with the pip cards, it felt more appropriate and more aligned to do that. I will be doing it August to October. So technically, by the time I'm filming this, I have started. It is in August. It's the first week of August. And I've split it down by 3 phases. Now, I did phases last time, but what's different this time is that how I'm laying out what I'm doing for each phase. So the 3 phases for this study are foundations and numbers first, moving on to focusing on the majors and the minors, doing a deep dive, true study there. And then the third part is integration, pairings, and practice. So for phase 1, for foundations and numbers, obviously the goal here is to get myself familiar, read the background of Marseille, the history, the philosophy, and just kind of introduce myself to numerology, which I do have a basic understanding of as I've come to know and learn and study through the RWS, but I want to do it through the lens of Marseille. And instead of creating a calendar and designating certain days to certain tasks, I have written down all the tasks that I want to complete in each phase. Now, each phase will be 30 days long, a month long, so I have all the time in that month to complete these, and it's not as rigid or structured. So the main study material that I will be using is the Marseille Tarot Revealed. Now, this is a very popular book, especially if you are starting out with Marseille and starting to learn about it. It is mentioned pretty much everywhere, so I thought it'd be a good place to start with. So I have broken up this book also into my phases. And also, you guys, I didn't realize that this book was like full color and that shiny, almost like, I don't want to say magazine paper, but it's that shiny color paper like throughout the whole book that's pretty like heavy. So I was really surprised at the quality of this. It's really nice. So there are a total of I think 12 chapters in this book, and I have broken them down to match my phases. So for phase 1, I'll be reading chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I almost thought about doing chapter 10 in phase 1 because it really talks about the number cards, but that got more in the weeds and more detailed, and I felt that that fit more appropriately for the deep dive portion in phase 2. For phase 1, I have about 4 chapters to read. Currently, I am making my way through chapter 3. I'll just kind of give you a sneak peek of things I've been highlighting and underlining and annotating because I like to do that in my books. It helps me retain information and learn. I am also taking notes in my book here, and I have a whole dedicated section to this book and my studies, as well as other notes that I'll be taking with the other activities in each of the phases. Moving on to phase 2, I have chapters 5, the major suit, chapter 6, the major cards, and then chapter 7, minor suits, 8, the ace, 9, court cards, and 10 number cards. This is truly where the real meat of the study is going to be, is phase 2. And then phase 3 kind of rounds it out with some light reading about spreads, which will fit into the integration really nicely. And then I wanted to create my own Marseille cheat sheet based on the information provided here in this chapter. So some of the goals that I have for phase 1 is I want to study this deck. So although I am studying Marseille for the first time, what is really important to note that this deck is the one that I'm doing a deep dive with. So I want to give attention to it as well, not have that get lost. And the reason that I originally chose this deck is because it was the only Marseille deck that I had in my collection until I purchased the Squid Marseille Tarot. Now, the reason I did this is because I've heard lots of accolades about the guidebook in this deck and how it breaks down the visual components of the cards. Now, I do realize that these are obviously very different styles. One is a little bit more earthy and serious, and this one is definitely more quirky and playful in nature. But I really love how that contrast is going to serve me in my studies. Now, I have Tarocchi by Mr. Friborg here in order, but yeah, as you can see, they're definitely different styles. I really think this is going to lend itself to a very balanced learning session and learning approach and experience with the Marseille. Going back to this guidebook here, the author describes what the Five of Cups is about. It provides keywords and a depiction. And then this is the part here, visually, the visual components of Marseille, which is really, really important. And the reason I wanted to bring in this deck and guidebook as I go through my deep dive study with Tarocchi by Mr. Friborg is because I am a very visual learner. And so the fact that Jess Roller here has a visual component in her guidebook, I think will really help me grasp and understand the pips a little bit better. And I know that they might depict, so let me try to find the Three of Coins here, just so we have a matchup. This one is not in order, so give me a minute here. I think we all should always just maybe start backwards, because isn't that always the case? Where the card we're looking for is in the back. So obviously we can see that the structure of how the pips are organized here are very different. So Tarocchi by Mr. Friborg has them linear here in a row, and the Three of Coins in Squid Cake is more balanced and almost like a triangle shape. But I think the way she speaks about the leaves and how the movement of the plants and where the coins are situated will also help me to translate that into what's going on here as well. I will pay attention more to the details, even though they're kind of situated a little bit differently. So I think these two are going to be really nice companions for one another as I do my deep dive with this deck. So I know it kind of seems like it might get a little bit confusing, but I think for me, I need that visual notation there because the guidebook here for Tarocchi by Mr. Friborg is pretty bare bones. And I think it's great. It's to the point, which is how I've heard, you know, Marseille can be read. And so I think it matches that theme, but as like a beginner deck to start with, the guidebook doesn't seem to match that too well. And I had already committed to doing a deep dive with this deck and I didn't want to switch. So I'm just going to be using this as another resource. So let's get back here to the phases quickly. So I really tried to balance the tasks between reading chapters, the guidebooks, doing some first impression activity type thing. I did build in my video commitments here between activities and reading and application. I tried to give a good mix because my brain kind of needs that. In phase 2 here, we move to the majors and minors with the goal to really tap into and get into the card meanings and the flow and the symbols and the themes and looking at the structure of the cards. So this will be done in September, and I will be reading chapter 5 through chapter 10, which is the biggest chunk of reading. But from there, I just have a couple of activities like journaling about what my favorite cards are so far and why. I think that's really nice to do. And then reflecting on the Fool's placement. So I know I have the Fool here at the beginning, but a lot of Marseille and in traditional Marseille, from what I've learned and I've studied, actually puts the Fool here after the World. So traditionally, that's kind of where they've put the Fool, and just maybe reflecting on that I thought would be nice after I spend some time time with the majors. And then I wanted to do like this suit showdown activity here where I compare cards between the Squid Cake and Tarocchi by Mr. Friborg, just kind of doing a side-by-side comparison, picking out what resonates, so on and so forth. And then we enter phase 3, which I find almost more important than any other phase. And that's because that's where we take the studying that we've done and we put it into practice. We put it into application. So this is all about trying spreads, reading the last few chapters, playing around with intuitive readings versus memorized meanings, which I feel like I might struggle a little bit with because I'm going to be having that numerology, like deep dive study, making charts and all that. So to go from studying about it and trying to memorize it to then do more intuitive readings, which is what the author here, Bendov, in this book kind of describes about the open reading, just really trusting your intuition. And then of course doing some fun pairings, that's always a great thing to do and experiment with. And then I wanted to do a Marseille and RWS side by side. I think that will really help give me even more context to see the differences or similarities. And again, creating that cheat sheet I referenced earlier for me going forward, and then filming my wrap-up video after all of this is done. So that there, you guys, is my plan for studying Marseille, but mostly I don't want to forget that this is a deep dive with Tarocchi by Mr. Friborg. I've had this for quite a while and I've flipped through it. I truly resonate with the images, the kind of like skeletal figures here. And then the pips I feel like are actually very beautiful and ornate and stunning. And through the screen, seeing other Marseille style decks, I never truly felt a call to it. And so when I picked this one up, I also promised that I would study Marseille and get to know it. I've been a little bit fearful of it. It's obviously just because it's something new and unfamiliar to me. I don't know, the whole fact that there's different systems, like I get their branches of each other. I can see how they branch off. Like there are some major differences between them, but I don't know, I'm just really nervous to have to re-enter that space of relearning, almost like for the first time, because for me, learning the tarot was very difficult. It was not easy and there was a lot of frustration at the beginning. And I think it'll be interesting to see how I handle it now, even though it's not brand new. I'm bringing an experience, you know, different perspectives now and familiarity in some ways, but it is kind of like being the fool all over again and just kind of diving into something that I didn't really fully understand or know what I was getting into, but it's exciting all the same. So thank you guys for being here, for checking out what I'm going to be doing for the next few months. Of course, I'm going to still be using other decks in my practice. Stay tuned for all of my monthly wrap-ups on that. I will weave in a section for this in my monthly wrap-up videos, and then of course I will do a more detailed, dedicated wrap-up at the end of the 3 months. That's the plan. Thank you so much for tagging along. If you're curious about things that I'm resonating with or what's going on, always have my socials in the description of my videos. And until next time, see you around.